The Cathedral of Consciousness. A contemplation on the architecture of inner silence. The architecture of inner space. Every soul carries within it a structure larger than any temple raised by human hands, a cathedral of consciousness, where thought tolls like a distant bell and feeling wears its channel the way a river wears stone, patiently, without hurry, across years it does not count. Most of us live only in the nave of this inner house. We mistake its echoes for the whole of things. We furnish it with memory, hang it with the stained glass of belief, so that even honest light enters already colored, already bent to what we expected to see. We rarely ask who laid these foundations, or when. We simply wake one day already kneeling, already mid-psalm, already fluent in a devotion whose first words we cannot recall learning. And yet, even here, amid the noise of ordinary living, there are unexplained stillnesses, a held breath before speaking, the pause between one thought and the next, the small hush that follows a bell after it has stopped ringing. These are not absences. They are doors left slightly open. Aphorism. You have been standing inside a cathedral your whole life, mistaking its silence for emptiness. The real cathedral, a map of ordinary awareness. Walk further, and the architecture reveals itself. A vaulted ceiling of memory, arching so high that its farthest ribs disappear into shadow. Side chapels where private obsessions burn their small candles down to nothing. A floor worn smooth by the pacing of old griefs. None of this is metaphor only. It is the actual field in which a lifetime unfolds, as real as any monastery of stone. And like any sacred house, it was built for a purpose larger than its furnishings. The incense of longing rises here, whether or not we name it prayer. The faithful and the faithless alike keep vigil in these halls, humbled without knowing why, whenever they pause long enough to hear their own footsteps returning to them as echo. The ceiling does not ask to be understood, only entered. To map this awareness honestly is to admit, I did not build this place, and yet I have always lived in it, moving from chapel to chapel, mistaking each new devotion for arrival. Aphorism. The mind is not a thought about a cathedral. It is the cathedral, and you are both the pilgrim and the stone. Recognizing the doorways within. Somewhere beyond the columns of habitual thinking, past the last pew of the rehearsed self, a threshold waits, not hidden, only unnoticed, the way a monk overlooks the silence he has knelt inside for 30 years. The doorways are not extraordinary. They open in the gap after a psalm has ended, in the space a bell leaves behind it, in the tired humility of no longer needing to explain oneself. To recognize them requires no new faculty, only a willingness to stop patching every gap with thought, to let a pause remain a pause rather than filling it, the way one might resist relighting a candle simply because it has gone out. Faith here is not belief in an idea, but trust in the dark corridor before the eyes adjust. What appears at first as absence of experience turns out, on closer looking, to be experience without an edge, as when a monk, rising for the night office, finds the dark hallway already familiar, already lit from within by something other than lamps. Aphorism. The doorway does not lead away from the room. It leads into what the room was resting on all along. Beyond the nave, awakening to the fullness of silence. pass through, and the architecture does not vanish, it deepens. The vaulted ceiling remains, but is seen now as light rather than limit. The bell still tolls, yet its sound and the silence surrounding it are recognized as one unbroken fabric, movement and stillness no longer opposed but two gestures of a single hand. This is the paradox that cannot be resolved and need not be, that the temple is empty and utterly full in the same breath, that eternity does not lie beyond time but underneath it, holding each passing moment the way stone holds warmth long after the sun has moved on. Here contemplation ceases to be an effort and becomes simply what remains when effort is set down. Serenity is not achieved. It is uncovered, the way one uncovers a spring by removing what has silted over it. Peace, it turns out, was never manufactured in the nave. It was only ever obscured there. Aphorism. Silence was never the absence of the cathedral's life. It was the sound the whole structure makes when nothing is added to it. The rest that was always here. And so the seeker arrives, at last, nowhere new. The candle still gutters in its side chapel. The same worn floor receives the same tired feet. An ordinary afternoon light still falls slant through glass grown dim with age. Nothing about the room has changed, and this is precisely the revelation, that presence was never waiting at the end of a corridor, but folded quietly into the middle of things, patient as dust settling in a shaft of light. To rest here is not to stop seeking. It is to notice that the seeking itself was always taking place inside what it sought. The way a prayer is already answered by the humility that shapes its asking. The bell rings once more, or perhaps it never stopped. Either way, the sound and the listening and the silence that follows are, this moment, indistinguishable, and this, unresolved, unclaimed, and entirely ordinary, is enough. Aphorism. The cathedral has no exit, because you were never outside it. This breath, unadorned, is the whole of the temple.